Okay, we're going to look at Standard 3. We're going to look at the philosophical and cultural interaction of the classical Mediterranean between 700 and 400 BC to 400 CE. We'll probably break this into two parts, so this will be part 1 today. Alright, so in 3A we're going to compare the origins and the structure of the Greek polis, the Roman Republic, and the Roman Empire. Alright, we want to see how they were similar and contrast to a certain extent how they were different. Alright, so the first question is, how did the mountains, seas, islands, harbors, peninsulas, and straits of the Aegean Basin shape Greek economic, social, and political development and patterns of trade and colonization? Or in other words, how did geography affect the development of the ancient Greeks? It had a big effect. The physical geography of the Aegean Basin had a huge effect on the way that the Greeks developed economically with trade, the way they developed socially into kind of these individual groups, city-states, and politically it had an effect on how they developed. It kept them from unifying into one nation and kept them into separated city-states. So the expansion of Greek civilization through trade and colonization led to the spread of Hellenic culture across the Mediterranean and Black Sea. Basically, the fact that the Greeks were a seafaring people, that they sailed ships across the Aegean Sea, meant that their culture would also spread around the Eastern Mediterranean. So, Greek civilization is located in and around the Aegean Sea. Greece itself is a peninsula, the Balkan Peninsula. You also have the Peloponnesian Peninsula, which comes off of Greece as well. Of course, this would be located in what today is Europe. Greek civilization also was found along the coast of Asia Minor, which today would be Turkey. But the Greeks are in and around the Mediterranean Sea. You will also see Greek influence in the Black Sea and the Dardanelles, which is that straits between what is today Turkey and Europe. Some of the major Greek city-states that we'll be talking about are Athens and Sparta and Troy, also Macedonia, and we'll talk about their influence on Greece and Alexander the Great. So, economically and socially, how did Greece develop? The agriculture in Greece was pretty limited. They didn't have a lot of land that was available to grow crops. This is because Greece was so mountainous and so kind of spread out among different islands around the Aegean Sea. But because of the Aegean Sea, they were heavy into trade. Okay, so lots of commerce, and with that trade comes the spreading of Hellenic culture. Hellenic means Greece. Okay, the Greeks would have called themselves Hellenes. Okay. So Hellenic means Greece. The Greeks shifted at a point from a barter economy to a money economy, meaning that they stopped trading items for items and started trading coins for items. So politically, the mountainous terrain of Greece meant that they couldn't unify together into really any type of a nation or an empire until at least later in their history. So instead, Greece is going to be organized politically into city-states, okay? And we call these, in regard to Greece, we call these the polis, okay? P-O-L-I-S. The polis is the city-state. So each of these Greek city-states were designed to promote civic and commercial life. Basically, within the center of these cities would have been a common area where people would get together to trade goods, as well as, like in Athens, for example, it was a place for people to discuss government and practice their democracy. The Greeks colonized a lot of areas outside of what we would think of today as Greece, all the way over into what today is Italy and what is today Turkey. All of these areas were colonized by Greeks in this time period because of overpopulation. There's too many people and not enough land to support everybody, so they have to spread out around the Mediterranean to find land so that they can grow their crops. How did democracy develop in Athens? All right, Athens is the birthplace of democracy, the cradle of democracy, this form of government where people have the power. Okay, demo is people, and krasi is power. How did the Greeks and the Athenians in particular develop democracy? Again, democracy is a system of government in which the ruling power is in the hands of the people. So, classical Athens is where we find the most democratic system of government the world had ever seen at that point. Okay, Athens developed the most democratic system of government the world had seen at that point. So even though it was the most democratic system of government at that point, that doesn't mean that every person could participate in decision making, okay? Not every Athenian was able to vote. I'm just saying that of any people that could vote, the Athenians had the most. Athenian democracy is now a foundation of modern democracy, okay? Our democracy, here in the United States in the form of a republic, that concept of democracy comes from the Athenians. So Greece, you need to understand, was not entirely democratic. You had different types of government going on, different types of government in different city-states. So even though Athens was a democracy, you had another city-state called Sparta, which was an oligarchy. So this was a place where a group of very powerful individuals ruled the city-state. They didn't really practice democracy there. So, social structure and citizenship in the Greek polis. So, not everybody that is in Greece is a citizen. Okay, a citizen is only going to be a free adult male. So, no slaves, no women. Only citizens have political rights. Okay, only citizens have the right to vote or to be a member of the governing body. And the responsibility of civic participation in government is, once again, limited to citizens. Women and foreigners had no political rights. Slaves had no political rights. So Athens and democracy evolves over time. They don't just suddenly decide one day, hey, let's be a democracy. It evolves in steps. There are stages of evolution. Athens originally was a monarchy with a king, and then it became an aristocracy where the landowning nobles ruled. From time to time, it was a tyranny where they had a powerful individual who led Athens in times of crisis. But eventually it did evolve into a democracy where all of the citizens had a voice and a vote in the decisions of Athens. So some of the tyrants, the powerful individuals that we talked about who reformed Athenian democracy, you have Athenians like Draco and Solon. These are individuals who helped make those gradual steps towards democracy. Democratic principles that developed in Athens, you have the idea of direct democracy. Okay, this is where everybody who has the right to vote gets to vote, and majority rules. Okay, not what we have in the United States, not a direct democracy. We vote for representatives who then make decisions for us. A direct democracy, everybody is involved in making the decision. In Athens, you have public debate. In the center of Athens, folks would get together and they would discuss and debate and eventually vote on decisions. And duties of the citizen, the idea that the citizen has a duty to participate in his government, which I think is important to the United States and our culture and our government. That concept where citizens have the responsibility to participate in the democracy came from Athens. How was Sparta different from Athens? Again, Sparta was an oligarchy, so it was ruled by a small group of powerful people. Sparta, unlike Athens, had a very rigid social structure. Sparta was very militaristic and aggressive. The whole Spartan society was designed around warfare. It was designed around training soldiers and supporting those soldiers. To get into kind of the finer details of Spartan government and culture may take too long here, but certainly a very interesting topic. Ultimately, it resulted in Sparta being the most powerful military city-state in Greece. They had the best army in Greece. And because of that, they had a lot of influence and authority. And because of that influence and authority, there was a lot of competition between Sparta and Athens. Okay, the two city-states competed for influence and control of Greece. And it is that competition between Athens and Sparta that will lead to a famous series of wars in Greek history called the Peloponnesian War. I'll go back here and I'll just talk real briefly about the Peloponnesian War. So this Peloponnesian War is a war between Athens and Sparta, and it is a war that is fought really in three major stages. In all three of the stages, Sparta is able to defeat Athens, and it is the Peloponnesian War that's really going to end Athens' power in Greece. And this is power that Athens got because of the Persian Wars, which I'll be talking about next. Okay, so why were the wars with Persia important to the development of Greek culture? We'll probably stop here and pick back up here in part 2, but basically the Persian Empire was expanding and it wanted to conquer Greece, and Greece stood up to Persia and defended itself against Persian invasions, and ultimately would keep the Persian Empire from expanding any farther into Europe. So that's kind of what the Greeks did. They saved Europe, if you will, from the Persian Empire. But the Greeks defeated the Persian Empire and preserved their political independence. Another important result of these Persian wars is the fact that it caused Athens to become very powerful. And so in part 2, I will talk about how that